Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Now, we start out today with a message from the CDC. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is going on the record this year saying that the flu vaccine won't work. Now, just last week, the CDC had encouraged Americans to take the flu vaccine if they hadn't already gotten it. Now, health officials said that they had 160 million flu shots on the shelves and ready to go.
Unfortunately, there won't be any refund for anyone who already spent money on a flu shot this year. On the contrary, the CDC is saying if you do come down with the flu, there is a cure, but it's going to cost you more. But who's going to profit from this additional cost? The pharmaceutical giants, GlaxoSmithKline and Roche.
Now, Italy launched an official investigation after about a dozen people died within 48 hours of getting the flu shot. Their national health agency issued an immediate warning saying, don't take the vaccine. But here in America, the CDC isn't going that far, but instead are continuing to promote this failed vaccine as yet another big pharma drug.
Seems like all for the money there.
That's right.
Well, Southern California went from one extreme to the next this week as their severe drought condition turned into massive flooding with deadly mudslides. Overnight flash flooding sent a river of mud and debris through Southern California, swallowing cars, campers, and vans. As much as 4 inches of rain fell in 1 hour, causing a wall of debris to cut off access to 2 mountain towns.
At least 2,000 people were stranded and 1 person was killed after swift-moving floods swept their car away. In Forest Falls, a wall of moving mud as high as 15 feet and up to 75 feet wide could be seen coming down a hillside. Now, the fast-moving waters and debris swept the area so quickly, not everyone had enough time to escape.
Well, that is a lot of earth moving at one time. Well, Michael Scully at Mount Baldy, a Mount Baldy resident said, "This is the worst we've seen since at least 1969. Elsewhere in the state, this water is desperately needed. Currently, more than a dozen fires are burning in northern and central California as crews in Southern California continue their search and rescue operation and cleanup for this massive mess. Probably two worlds there.
Well, just days after a grand jury declined to indict Officer Darren Wilson for the death of Michael Brown, another officer was cleared in the death of Eric Garner. Garner died in July from a police chokehold after an altercation arose for illegally selling tobacco. Now, the video of Eric's death went viral mainly because of Eric's last words to the police saying, "I can't breathe." Take a look at this video.
Everybody standing here, they told you I didn't do nothing. I did not sell nothing. Because every time you see me, you want to harass me, you want to stop me, you want to sell a cigarette. I'm minding my business, officer. I'm minding my business. Please just leave me alone. I told you the last time. Please just leave me alone. Please don't touch me. Don't touch me, please. Hold on. Don't touch me, please. Came over. Do not touch me. Damn, man. All right, stop. Give us your hand, buddy. Where your hand, buddy? I can't breathe.
Once again, police beating up on people.
Well, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio commented on the decision earlier this evening, and he made an appeal to residents to protest peacefully. He said, I ask everyone to listen to what Ben Garner said and to what Eric Garner's son said as well. If you really want to dignify the life of Eric Garner, you will do so through peaceful protesting. You will work relentlessly for change. You will not sully his name with violence or vandalism. That doesn't bring us closer to a better community.
Well, this recent decision has once again sparked protests, but unlike last week's riots in Ferguson, New York protesters have been mainly peaceful. The protesters' message has been hands up, don't shoot, and I cannot breathe, symbolizing the two cases, the Michael Brown case and the Eric Garner case.
Well, New York City is not the only city seeing protest in the wake of the grand jury's decision. Another rally has been taking place in Washington, D.C., near the White House. People have been demanding justice over the issue of police abuse as well as racial disparities.
One protester commented, "The movement right now is that Black Lives Matter, and we're trying to impress it on as many people as possible. It's not just police brutality," he said. "It's not just private violence against black folks. It's all lives. All Black Lives Matter."
Despite the decision by grand juries, both in the case of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, federal investigations are underway. Now, deaths of these men have sparked a growing movement that has been gaining momentum across U.S. cities. Well, from wars within to wars without, YPN's Larry McGee has our coverage on Secretary Kerry's recent address to the Senate calling for increased war powers. And some of these powers are for them to be able to go after ISIS. Now, the question is ISIS the only target of the president's request?
No. And in fact, the proposed authorization pitched by the Secretary of State this week specifically requests that the fight not be limited to Iraq and Syria or prohibit the use of combat forces. Defense Secretary Hagle was in Iraq, where he was updated on the current state of affairs regarding America's ongoing battle with ISIS. The Iraqi Prime Minister reported that his army is taking the battle to the enemy, but could use more American planes and weapons to increase their effectiveness. Meanwhile, back at the Senate hearing, Senate Chairman Bob Menendez stated that this is the most important vote that any member of Congress can take. It is a vote that potentially sends America's sons and daughters into harm's way. And it is a responsibility that the chairman said that Congress does not take lightly. In making the case, while audience members held signs requesting no more war, Secretary Kerry began that the authorization, or AUMF, should give the president the clear mandate and flexibility he needs to successfully prosecute the armed conflict against Daesh. That's D-A-E-S-H, and is yet another name for ISIS and its affiliate forces. But, he stated, the proposed authorization should be limited to the threat posed by that group and by forces associated with it. In the Secretary's estimation, it will not be months, but years before ISIS is defeated. And one thing is for certain. Unless ISIS is stopped, it will continue to spread. And so, taking a cue from a recent statement given by Pope Francis, the Secretary says there should be no question that America and its partners have a moral duty and profound international security interests in stopping them. Provided the increased war powers are approved, the killing fields for America's children will be just that much more dangerous after the American military botched the delivery of supplies and weapons to one of its allies this week and delivered the cache of hand grenades and small rocket rounds directly into the hands of ISIS rebels. 28 bundles were reportedly dropped in an effort to assist Kurdish allies, and Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby admits that one of those bundles did not make it. The Rear Admiral also added that the U.S. has currently spent $424 million since August 8th in its fight against ISIS. Some of the tactics utilized by America in its fight with those they deem terrorists has drawn much criticism from citizens here in the States and abroad. The American use of torture, denied by some and acknowledged by others, is the subject of a Senate intelligence report that exposes and details the horrifying CIA tactics which are reigniting discussion regarding the U.S. government and torture. Starting in 2002, the CIA began using enhanced intelligence interrogation techniques, but that wasn't revealed to the public. In 2003, the Abu Ghraib scandal broke, which first began to call attention towards American treatment of its prisoners in Iraq. The Bush administration was placed in the hot seat, but maintained that the incident was not a part of a regular pattern. But by the end of the Bush administration, however, the presence of the program and its atrocities had been brought to light. And in 2005, the Washington Post reported on the black site prisons. In 2007, the New York Times detailed CIA tapes of torture that had been destroyed, and questions were now beginning to surface about the use of waterboarding. The CIA program was ended with the Obama administration, but the debate continues, however, with some politicians defending and supporting the use of torture, while others are now saying, never again. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Larry, we appreciate your reporting. Well, continuing our coverage on war-raging nations, China is the latest to flex its military muscles. They've confirmed they've successfully conducted a test flight of their new stealth fighter. Now, after the U.S. and Russia, it's the third country to put a stealth prototype into the air. This is a fifth-generation aircraft that incorporates parts made in China, Russia, and several other countries.
That's right. Now, China's J-31 stealth fighter plane could be designed for mid to low altitude attacks and may be deployed from an aircraft carrier, analysts say. The J-31 looks a lot like the American stealth fighter, the F-35. The U.S. claims that the Chinese hackers have targeted defense contractors, and authorities believe that the Chinese got the blueprints through a cyber assault on a contractor for Lockheed Martin and built their fighter off those specs.
Now, the Chinese deny those claims. Lockheed Martin says that the Chinese didn't get the crown jewels, the most sensitive information about the F-35. China tested their jet when President Obama was in Beijing for the Asia-Pacific Summit. Now, analysts say that China's moves isn't about confronting the U.S. militarily, but reducing the U.S.'s influence in its neighborhood. In other words, we want you to stay out.
That's right. The Chinese are trying to put its military reach further into the Pacific, on the sea, under the sea, and of course in the air in order to deter, as you just were saying there, Jeff, others from coming too close to China. Now, analysts say that China is still far behind the U.S. in pure hardware and raw military power, but the worry is that these two powers flexing their muscles over the Pacific will lead into a new arms race.
Well, Minuteman III missiles still dot the landscape throughout the U.S. with warheads 20 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima and could kill millions if dropped on a major city. Now, the Air Force still keeps all 450 on constant alert, ready to go. Now, many of the missile silos are close to rural communities, surrounded by bales of hay and even grazing cattle. Some of the pictures, Katan, you can see the farms almost right next to the missile silos.
Too close to comfort. Something to think about, Jeff, is whether accidental or deliberate, once these missiles are launched, there's no way to call them back or to destroy the warheads that are on top of them. So once they're hot, they're going to hit their target.
Wow. Yeah. Well, some worry that the U.S. has given the go to a new Cold War. In a recent vote of 411 to 10 by the House Resolution 758. In the title of the resolution, it strongly condemns the actions of the Russian Federation under President Vladimir Putin, which has carried out a policy of aggression against neighboring countries aimed at political and economic domination.
It also states that military intervention by the Russians poses a threat to international security. Some critics say that the statement could be used, of course, as justification to go to war with Russia. One of those critics was former Congressman Ron Paul. When interviewed, he stated that he wasn't surprised that this resolution actually passed.
He said the 16 pages of the report probably popped up an hour before the vote, and most likely nobody read it. He said that he believes that the 10 people who voted against it were the ones that probably did get an opportunity to read it. In fact, he recalled a similar resolution that indicated that we were going to go to war with Iraq, even though it wasn't a declaration of war 4 years later, the U.S. was at war with Iraq.
Go figure. Now, as the former congressman closed out his interview with RT, he mentioned that there are some other people who are speaking out against war and so forth.
He didn't mention who they were.
Didn't say who, but
he said some other people.
Definitely confident of that.
Well, a report was recently released regarding interrogation tactics that included waterboarding, rectal hydration, and other things that cause pain, humiliation, and suffering to those inmates. Former Vice President Dick Cheney responded to the tactics mentioned in the report by saying, "What are we supposed to do? Kiss them on both cheeks and say, 'Please, please, tell us what you know'?"
He continued, "We did exactly what needed to be done in order to catch those who were guilty on 9/11 and to prevent another attack." Cheney also says that the torture tactics used led to actionable intelligence that was vital in the success in keeping the country safe from further attacks. And Jeff, some of those inmates were dressed in diapers and allowed to wallow in their own feces and urine, while others were fed, force-fed, I guess you can say, pureed food through their rectum.
Wow, terrible. Now, also recently, a speech given by former Vice President Dick Cheney, several students got up and walked out in protest, also calling the former vice president a warmonger. Take a look at this.
We're deadly serious about maintaining our commitments, if you will. Well, let's go to a question on that.
Talk to the Pakistani ambassador or someone like that.
One of the questions that this student's asked.
Even the generation today are frustrated with what they're seeing. Well, if you've had enough of this world grown cold, contact the House of Yahweh to find answers you need in these troublous times. Answers that will save you from the prophesied destruction soon to come. Contact the House of Yahweh today and request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites, www.yahweh.com, www.yeshuahawkins.com, or www.yahwehsbranch.com. You can email them at info@yahweh.com, and for any calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Well, stay with us. Up next, the only one authorized to teach the message of peace, Yisrael Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.